Guys, and what is it? It is late night in the cave. Da-na-na-na. Hey, we're going to be in Luke's writings, chapter 5, verse 4. This is going to be what I call a topical message. And I'm telling you up front, what I'm going to do is glean out of the verse a principle that you and I can apply to our lives, and I've seen it many times within my own life. Listen to the text, okay? Luke chapter 5, verse 4. When he had stopped speaking, he said to Simon, "Launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." Friends, we're not going over the whole verse. We're not going to talk about Peter arguing with Jesus, being sarcastic. Peter saying, hey, the fish don't bite in the morning. I'm a fisherman. I've been out toiling all night. There's no fish out there. We're not going into that. We're going into this phrase that's within this verse. Launch out into the deep. Friends, there's going to be a point within your Christian life, and it's happened to every man that's out there, that God is going to require something of you. And what that is he wants you to launch out into the deep, into the unknown waters, into that which you're not familiar with, and he is going to push you into that you're not comfortable with. It happens to all of us. You don't want to argue. It's scary, but here's the thing. You can go to God, which will strengthen you. Listen very carefully. When God does this, it goes against your rationale. It goes against your reasoning. It goes against your knowledge because you're trying to figure it out ahead of time. Look at what it is. Oftentimes blows your mind apart if you think about it. So it's not, I'm going to ponder this. I'm going to reason this out. I'm going to think it through. Precept upon precept, line upon line. This makes sense. Friends, what Jesus is doing, okay, he's taking you and you don't know how to swim and he's throwing you into the deep end of the pool. He's doing it for a reason. This commentary talks about it, and I thought this was interesting. When Christ teaches you something about himself, he implements it into your life through experiences. God is throwing you into a new season, but better yet said, God is throwing you into a new experience so you can learn a deeper way to trust in him. That's it. Friends, let me give you another example. When Jesus was talking to Peter, Jesus isn't using big fancy words. He's teaching him in his current vocation. And yet everything that Jesus is saying is in direct opposition of what everything Peter knew to be true. He knew you cannot catch fish during a hot day, Lord, but at thy word, I'll do what you say. God does this to us, guys. And what he's looking for is what? Immediate obedience. He's looking for fearlessness. He's looking for you, okay, not to be worried that you're being thrown into the lion's den. You don't need to worry about being thrown into what? The fiery furnace, because that's what it's likened unto. He's telling you, go out into the deep. Go out into that which you're not comfortable with. And sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't. But if we do hearken unto his voice, there's always a reward. Listen. There's always a reward. Peter's out there. He obeys. He throws the net. He doesn't think anything's going to come of it, guys. He thinks, I've done this 1,000,000 times before. I'm just doing it because of this guy. He's a teacher of some sort. He's a rabbi. I think he's a pastor. Throws it out. When we throw away our logic and our reasoning and our understanding and just obey that simple act of obedience, when we're following Christ, when we're hearing the still small voice, when he is pushing us into the deep and we obey, you will not believe the rewards that come back your way. In Peter's life, it was a boat full of fish. And you're like, who cares? Let me say it like this. In Peter's life, it was a boat filled with money. He takes the fishies and he brings them to land, and now he sells the fish. So the fish equal cash. He had a boatload, he had equivalent of 3 weeks of work worth of fish. That's how many fish were. You didn't catch tons and tons and tons of fish. The waters were overfished. I mean, there was nothing left in that place. And yet when God speaks, things happen. And yet this simple act of obedience on Peter's part wasn't the deep water at all. The deep water was going to start by the words that came out of Jesus' mouth when Jesus says, "Follow me. I'm going to make you a fisher of men." Friends, he's in some deep water now because he's going to be walking alongside God. And he's going to be seeing the heart of the Father through Jesus. And he's going to be witnessing that which can't take place. That can't take place. And we hate tax collectors. And that woman there, she's a whore. She was caught in the very act. And God is just going to stretch him like a piece of taffy. He is just going to stretch every part of Peter till there's nothing left. And then God says, finally, I got him in a place where I can use him. See, with Peter denying Christ 3 times, that was by some considered an F on the paper. You failed, Peter. That was an A+. Because Jesus told him ahead of time, this is what's going to take place in your life, and this is what it's going to take to finally break you to where I can use you. Friends, in my own personal life, I was going along, I was doing my thing. I love saying that, guys. And then it's out of the blue, and I was in a happy spot at the time. I can think of several times where everything was going good. All the bills are paid, I had a good career, I had more than enough, more than enough. And then all of a sudden, Jesus came along. And from my perspective at the time, he's ruining the party. Honestly, because he's asking me to do something which is pushing me into the deep water. And instead of being the pillar of righteousness that you think I am, I'm not that at all. I was like, Lord, I got to think about this. Like I'm reasoning with God. It's like I'm Moses and I'm talking to God at the burning bush. And I was like, man, this doesn't sound like this is my cup of tea at all. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing really good at work. I just got a $3 an hour raise. And, 6 months ago, I got a new car and I'm living in this beautiful place and I'm dating this girl and she's fine, Lord. She's really fine. And I had to reason. And God always wins. You guys know that. And here's the thing. He asked me to do something. I was just like, are you kidding me, Lord? Are you kidding me, Lord? What in the world makes you think I could ever do that? And there's the answer right there, guys. There is the answer of the deep water. You want deep water, deep water drilling? The answer to it is this. You can't do it. He will ask you. It's almost like God knocked on your door and said, hey, let's go take a flight. And you're like, we're going to the airport? Do I need bags? No, I'm going to teach you how to fly. And you're like, well, that ain't happening, Lord. See what I'm saying? God will ask you to do something that's just in your mindset with your gift set is impossible. And it is impossible. But during that, which you think is impossible, he's going to accomplish it in and through you. And in the midst of that, you are going to experience him on a new level. You are just going to understand who he is, how he feels, how he operates. And as you're walking out with Jesus hand in hand into the deeper water, the relationship grows stronger and stronger and stronger. Henry Blackaby said this, God does not want you to merely gain intellectual knowledge of truth. That's what most people think God wants. That's what most cult members think God wants. Knowledge of him. He doesn't want you to have knowledge of him. A baboon can have knowledge of him. God does not want you merely to gain intellectual knowledge of truth. He wants you to experience him as truth. There are things about Jesus you will never learn outside of obeying him in the deep waters of life. Friends, and from some of the emails and some of the posts, some of you are in deep waters, but all of you are not in deep waters. See, it is God who initiates taking you out into the deep waters. He knows when it's the right time. When I was a kid, I lived in Florida and I used to play at the beach all the time. But my mom, which was really good at protecting me, says, don't go past your knees unless I'm with you. Because there was riptides. And so I was allowed to play and I had my orange, those little orange things that you slip up your arm. I had those orange things on and I love building these sandcastles and these moats and I had so much fun. But there was a time when I was a 4th grader that I was a big boy now. you know? And Mom was saying, you need to be careful, you need to be careful, you need to be careful. And I was at the beach, and I can't remember, tell you the truth, whether it was Mom at the beach, and I don't think it was my mom. I think I was spending the night at a friend's house, and I decided to disobey Mom, which was leading me in the right direction. I'm going to go past where I normally do. And here's what took place. The parents that were supposed to be watching us were doing something else. My friends over there, and a riptide sucked me under. Listen very carefully. I'm a fourth grader, and the only thing I had going for me was I belonged to God. And I can remember going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. That's what it felt like at the bottom of the ocean. It was like I was in just like a tsunami. I was being drugged, and it just felt like it was so fast, and I was fighting it. And all of a sudden, listen very carefully, because this was my first experience with God. God's Spirit came over me and said, just hold your breath. And as he spoke to me, it was just like he didn't just give me this lecture. What he said to me without speaking was, just relax. Just hold your breath. Allow it to take you the distance. Friends, the current took me out 30 seconds straight. And I was a swimmer at the time. I was at the boys' club every day after school. So I was swimming on the boys' team. You know what I'm saying? I was a great swimmer. I was like a fish, okay? But 30 seconds of doing nothing but allowing the current to take you out, and I felt the dirt along the bottom of the ocean. I felt rocks hitting me, and I was going feet first. Luckily, I wasn't going head first. And all of a sudden, I felt like the Lord was like, okay, now swim up. And I started swimming. And it was black. And I couldn't see light. I couldn't see the sun beaming down. And I swam, and I swam, and I swam, and then finally... And guys, you got to realize I got so much dopamine and adrenaline flowing through me because it was scary. But while I was resting, I could feel the Lord ministering to me. I wasn't in any stressful case. It's only when I released from that and I started swimming upward. And I swam, and it wasn't until I saw light that I started to calm down, but I was out of air. Guys, I was out of air. And when I finally got to the top of the water, I went, oh, and I started breathing. And I looked back towards shore, and there was a designated area that was roped off that everyone was allowed to swim in. I'm about 4 football fields in length, okay, further than the ropes. I'm out there with the dolphins. I'm out there with the sharks. I'm out there with the sports fishermen, okay? I mean, I'm in the middle of nowhere, a little fourth grader, but let me tell you what I had. I was in the deep water, but I was in the deep water with God. And that makes all the difference in the world. And so what did you do? I started swimming. The distance didn't scare me. Going at the bottom of the ocean didn't scare me. What scared me is when I broke loose of the current and I couldn't see the light. Friends, when you take your eyes off of God, you can't see the light. You can't understand truth. When you're doing your own thing, you're blinded. You're a blind man walking through this life. But swimming all that time with no sight scared me. And then I just started swimming into shore. And I started swimming and started swimming. I swam for like 15 minutes. And then I could hear the lifeguards, after I'd swam for 15 minutes, blowing their whistle. You need to get on this side of the ropes. What are you doing? Blah, 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 blah. Friends, that was the first time in my life that I heard the voice of God, that I experienced God. I mean, I was going to Sunday school. My mom was a church secretary. Friends, I had heard it all. And I'd asked Jesus into my heart, but it was just not until then that I experienced God. And I was like, oh my goodness. And guys, this is going to sound silly. I was like, he's real. I was like, he's really real. Because he spoke to me as I was being drugged under the ocean. And one of the things I remembered was how cold it started to get. Man, when you're on the bottom of the ocean, it's like freezing ice cold water. It was so cold, but that kept me so alert. And God kept on speaking to me and ministering to me as he, what'd you say, Matt? As he took me into the deep waters. Friends, I'm here to tell you God's going to take you sometime in your life into the deep waters and into the deeper waters and even yet deeper waters in your life. And friends, let me give you this cautionary note. As he takes you into the deep waters, you need to listen to him very carefully. very carefully. Because if I would have fought that current, even being a great swimmer, I couldn't have fought it for 30 seconds straight. I would have burned up all of my oxygen, and I could have drowned if I didn't listen to the still small voice of God. But God, when He's in the deep waters with you, He will direct you exactly what you are to do. He's very, very, very clear. And He's very, very invested in you. He's not throwing the towel in on you. And if you went into deep waters and you didn't listen, you know you didn't listen. You know what I'm saying? You'll get another chance, because all of your life He's gonna propose that thing to you. He's sometimes gonna take you into deep waters, and sometimes He's gonna tell you to go to the deep waters. Whatever He does, realize it's for you to experience Him as God, and you are so much the benefactor of that experience, because now you have solid, concrete experiences with your God, and they're good. Your life is never the same. Hey, this is Matt, Late Night in the Man Cave.